Good morning, this is Dwayne, and today I'd like to talk a little bit about ear training. There are great ear training courses you can take, from a wide variety of sources. I'm thinking particularly of Berkeley School of Music in Boston. They have a wonderful course on ear training, and it's spendy, but it's worth it. Some of the top musicians take that course, and of course there's others in many other schools. But today I'd just like to tell you kind of my history. I never took a course in ear training until much later, after I really didn't need it because I'd already learned what intervals and chords sound like. So let's take a look at intervals today, and I think you can train your own ear to identify intervals. It's important for any musician, particularly piano players, to be able to hear the difference between intervals, because then you know what's going on when other music is playing, when other musicians are playing, and then you can pick it up. Let's start with this, the closest interval. That's a second. You can kind of associate that with yeah, kind of like that. Okay, so a second is the closest possible two notes, and it sounds like the start of that tune that we all played. Okay, chopsticks. So when you hear that kind of sound anywhere, you know that's a second, right? A third is the next thing in the song. It's also the middle part of that song. When you hear sounds like that, those are thirds, okay? Those are thirds, okay? Now let's skip fourths for a minute because they're a little harder. Let's go to an octave. I always associated an octave with going from one floor, say we're on the main floor, we go up to the second floor, okay? This would be the second floor, that'd be the third floor and fourth floor and so on, okay? So when I hear that sound, they're the kind of the same sound, aren't they? This is exactly twice, that string is vibrating exactly twice what that's vibrating at, okay? We won't get into the science of sound right now, but just take my word for it. There's an A and there's an A. This A is going twice as fast as that A, exactly. I mean, if your piano's in tune, it's exactly, okay? So when you hear this kind of sound, those are octaves, okay? Now, halfway between an octave, in other words, between the lower floor and the upper floor, you have a fifth. And I learned to remember that. I thought of that as a mezzanine. Have you been to some stores that have a mezzanine? Between the first and the second floor, it's a partial floor called a mezzanine, okay? And I think of when I hear that open sound like that, I think of it mezzanine. Another way you might identify it is it sounds kind of oriental, doesn't it? The reason it sounds that way is because a lot of oriental music is based on the pentatonic scale, just a 5-note scale, and so you have a lot of fifths involved, okay? Now let's go into a six. When I grew up, there was a song called This Old House, and it ends like this: going to meet the saints. It ends on a six, and so whenever I heard that sound, I knew it was a six. Now this takes time to do, but if you concentrate on the various intervals, you can learn to identify them like that, compare them to things in life, associate them. In other words, any kind of memory course teaches association, and so if you associate that with chopsticks and that with the next view of chopsticks, and that is a mezzanine, and that is a six that sounds bright, or the end of, like I said, the end of my old house, and that's an octave, and so on. You can begin to hear those and train your own ear, and it doesn't cost anything to do that because you can do it at home on your own piano, okay? A major seventh or a seventh sounds like that. It's kind of dissonant like a second, but you can tell it's not a second because those are close together, right? I mean, you can hear they're close together. Those are separated, but if it sounds like a second but separated, that's a seventh. I like to visualize it like this. as a major seventh on Misty. When Misty starts on my own, that's a major seventh, okay? Now we've covered everything except the fourth. Now the fourth is, to me, is the hardest thing to identify when you hear that, but I learned to identify it in terms of da 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 da. What was it? The Addams Family. It was something that went da da da. Or walk up the stairs. Think of it, walking up the stairs, or walk down the stairs. That sound is always a fourth. So if you hear that, and you can think about walk up the stairs or walk down the stairs. That's a fourth. Okay, so let's review a little. That sounds a second. That sounds a third. That sounds a fourth. That's a fifth, or mezzanine. That's a sixth. That's a major seventh, and that's an octave, or the next floor. Okay? So I would train your ear to hear those just using the white keys before you do anything else. Then you can go back after you can successfully identify a second. Then you can go to a minor second, and that has an even tighter sound, doesn't it? If you play these repeatedly, and as I was ear training myself, I would do that. I would play the intervals over and over again to get the feeling of it. 6, minor 6, fifth, diminished fifth, and so on. Okay, just repeat play the notes over and over again on your own piano, and then have somebody in your family play them like that. And you don't look at the keyboard, but just listen and see if you can identify those notes. Okay, and you can do a lot of your own ear training without ever taking an ear training course. Now, I'm not saying don't take it. Of course, if you have the opportunity to take an ear training course, do it. But before you do that, you can learn a lot on your own. And I think you'd be surprised how fast you can learn to identify various intervals. Now, tomorrow, I think we'll talk about identifying chords by ear. In other words, you're training your ear to hear various kinds of chords. But today, just wanted to specialize in in intervals. So that's it for today. If you enjoy this sort of thing and you find it helpful, come on over to playpiano.com and sign up for our free newsletters, which has tips galore, piano tips galore on all areas of music and music theory and piano playing. So hope to see you there. Bye-bye for now.